Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on Stay Free with Russell Brand. At the moment, we're on YouTube, but that will only be for the first 15 minutes before we are exclusively on the home of free speech, Rumble. And of course, our free speech is the free speech to unify in the spirit of love, not free speech to speak hatefully of one another. Of course, the reason we're so excited today is because we are being joined for a world exclusive. We have Tucker Carlson with us in studio, his first interview since leaving Fox News. Thanks for joining us, Tucker Carlson.
Russell Brand. As your friend and as someone who watches a lot of your videos, I'm amazed that I'm here. This is prettier even. I'm not going to give away critical details and jeopardize your safety, but this is, if people could see where you're broadcasting from.
Do you think it's a beautiful...
I think it's beautiful. And that's not an overstatement. I think it's beautiful.
Thank you so much, because I think we have a beautiful intention here. We're recognizing that independent media and independent politics are beginning to coalesce. It's becoming increasingly unlikely that you can report truthfully, honestly, and in good faith, putting forward anti-establishment narratives without being attacked. Of course, we're going to talk about a lot of subjects here, but primarily we're going to want to talk about the reasons for you leaving Fox. We're going to want to talk about some of the reporting around Jan 6. We're going to want to talk about the attacks that you endured in your defense of the text messages around Trump. First of all, I want to start off, since you left Fox, how have you been personally, and how does it compare to the time when you left MSNBC in terms of its emotional impact on you?
Well, I've been fired. It's not the first time I've been fired. And I think in our business, when you work for a big company in media and, you say what you think, there's an expectation that you could get fired. So I've always had that. And I've always tried to take the long view, not just on media, but on life. All graves go unvisited in the end. I always think that. And so I was surprised. I didn't, expect to get fired that morning at all in April. So I was shocked, but I wasn't really shocked. And I wasn't mad. It's not my company. And when you work for someone else, that person reserves the right, and in fact has inherently the right to decide whether you work there or not. And I don't know why I was fired. I really don't. I'm not angry about it. You can believe me or not, but I think you can feel that I'm not. And, I wish Fox well. There was, ugly leaking, I'm a racist or whatever they leaked, or someone there leaked to the New York Times, but that's not true. And I think the people who run the company know that's not true. I actually don't think they did it. And I'm not mad about it. And I've been happy. I guess the only thing that bothers me is I'm 54. And when you get a little bit older, and my wife and I, our children are grown and we live in rural settings, as you do, because we believe in nature and God and dogs, you can lose your drive. I mean, it's just a little bit too nice, kind of. And I do feel like we, people who are healthy and aware and who can read, have an obligation to be engaged in the life of the community they live in, and the life of the country they live in, and the life of the world, to the extent that they can. And so my only fear has been maybe being a little bit too happy. I've spent a lot of time trout fishing, a lot of time, we have 4 dogs, a lot of time with my dogs and my wife, and a lot of kind of late breakfast outside and stuff. And, that's not, that's great, but life has got to be more than that. So now I'm back to work, and I'm grateful to be doing that.
The fact that you're broadcasting now on Twitter suggests that you still want to remain engaged in the international conversation, which is a conversation about ethics. It's a conversation about power. If you're watching us on Rumble right now, remember to press the red button if you want to join us on Locals. That's where I watch the conversation. I can see Sensitive Hearts, Ash Ella, all of our beautiful, unified, diverse community that speak openly and freely there. Please do join us, because at the end of this conversation, Tucker's going to join us for an additional chat. True or false with Tucker? In a sense, the whole conversation is true or false. What's the point in having a conversation if there isn't some line between authenticity and falsehood? You touched briefly for a moment on the idea of racism, and of course this is an idea that's talked about a lot, or an accusation really that's been offered. When I went on your show in America, mate, which I enormously enjoyed, and the personal connection with you that we have since cultivated is the thing that I perhaps most enjoyed. I spoke to some of my friends that are overtly liberal overall, even though many of them are beginning to recognize that the categories of left and right are shifting. What they said is that Tucker Carlson, when he talks about demographic shifts in the United States of America, how the balance between different ethnicities is shifting over time, that is codified racism. And some of them, like some of my mates that are LA Democrats, like, me, I don't believe in any political party anymore in this country.
Tell
or
me
your
about
country.
it. Yeah, no, I agree.
But I do still feel that some of the principles that are more typically associated with the left, like recognizing that all voices have a value in the conversation, and that essentially that racism is bad. So how do you feel about that? And what are you talking about when you say there's a demographic shift? What do you mean?
I would say a couple things. First, I always try. I'm over 50, so like, why wouldn't I just say exactly what I think at all times? And I do. And so if I had, whatever my racial views are, I would just say them. And I'm just saying them now. So my views about race begin with my religious faith, which is not very sophisticated, but is sincere.
Yeah.
And that begins with the belief, the knowledge, the certainty that God created people, that they're not objects, they're not machines, they're not widgets in a bin waiting to be assembled by some company. They are distinct individuals with distinct souls, and they have equal value in the eyes of God. Doesn't mean they have equal ability. Doesn't mean they all look the same, but it means they have equal inherent value. And my politics flow from that belief.
Yes.
And so the idea that you would reduce people to their race and say, we're going to treat this person better or worse because of his skin color is repugnant to me. And it's something that I've argued against every day that I was at Fox News, I think all of my life. You can't punish or reward people based on their immutable characteristics.
Yes.
Because they didn't choose those characteristics. So it's inherently unfair. It's inherently immoral. I'm totally opposed to it. And so if that's a racist position, I guess, I'll just stand and take the punishment. I don't think that is. I think that's an argument against racism. I think it's wrong to reduce people to qualities they were born with and they can't control. Period.
Yes.
My views on immigration are super simple and I think mainstream and sensible. The fact of who lives in a country more than any other fact determines what the country is like. And so if you change it radically over a very short period of time, you're going to have a lot of social upheaval, a lot of churn. It's going to rattle people. People can't metabolize change very well at all. The Industrial Revolution led to Stalinism and then the Third Reich. These are basic facts. It's not an attack on anyone's color at all. And I'm, whatever. But I would say, so those are my views. I support a lot of, I don't know how I feel about immigration as a topic. There are a lot of immigrants I love, including my best friend, for whatever it's worth. So I'm not against immigrants. That's insane. But the way that the United States is doing immigration is designed to wreck the country and to make it unstable and to destroy any social cohesion whatsoever, or social trust, to make people hate each other and add to racial division, which I hate because it's not solvable. In contrast to, say, class division. If we're arguing about class, well, at least class theoretically can change. I can ascend or descend classes, but race doesn't change because we're not responsible for it. We're created that way. So you don't want racial conflict. That's the one thing you don't want. And I feel that in the United States, our leaders not only want racial conflict, but are stoking it. But as a practical matter, just in the context of U.S. politics, and perhaps it's similar in the UK, the term racist or white supremacist or white nationalist, these are terms designed to stop people from talking. I remember the first time I was called a white supremacist. For whatever it's worth, and I don't want to sound defensive, but I grew up in Southern California in the 70s. Living with a father who was, in modern terms, very racially progressive or something. He was always saying, God created people. Racism didn't even make sense to me. That was not a factor in my life at all. And we lived right next to Mexico, whatever. So, but the first time I was called a white supremacist, I was like, geez, it hurt. It stung. And I thought, I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I know that I'm not one, but I know that that's like the worst thing you can be. That's like calling someone a Nazi, like, or a monster, or Satan, or like, what is that? And I was bothered by it. It was right when I started my last Fox show. So it was in the fall of 2016. And I did a kind of long, very sincere, I mean it too, sincere script about how, you know, this is what I believe, and we're all created by God, and you should never punish or reward people based on their skin color. And it had no effect at all. And then I realized the people using those terms are not sincere at all. There's no sincerity. The words have no meaning to them, except as they're useful as tools to acquire political power and to make anyone who stands in the way of that shut up or go away or go to prison. And so once I realized they weren't sincere, then it's like, that's between me and God. And not only am I not a racist, I'm not much of a hater. Yeah. I really try not to be. And there are things that I hate, and there are people I feel like I'm on the verge of hating sometimes, or I feel myself obsessing. You know, you're like in the truck, or you're, you know, walking the dogs and you're pissed about something, and I can't believe that fucking person, you know, whatever. And I really try and catch myself and say to myself, that will eat you if you let it fester like that. Don't be that way. I'm a very flawed person, but I really try not to be a hater, because I think that's death. I mean it too.
One of the areas of your answer there that I imagine we could talk about further are the distinctions between having a position on immigration and its potential ability to destabilize an indigenous population, how you, again, cross-reference that with colonial and imperial history, how you cross-reference that with globalism and an attempt to create sort of like a centralist authoritarian model. You know, that's something we could talk about a lot longer, I'm sure, the distinction between racism and having a position on immigration. Also,
you get in the way of their business plan and they call you a racist. That's what's actually happening here.
And perhaps I wonder too, Tucker, indeed, about these new categories of misinformation, malinformation, and disinformation, how new ways of censoring and shutting down conversation are beginning to appear. I reckon we should come off YouTube now. If you're watching us on YouTube, the next question I'm going to ask you, Tucker, there's a viewer question. This is from @TheBoss. This is on Locals. If you want to watch us on Locals, press the red button and join our Locals community. This is how we aim to have conversations like this all the time, because my belief is actually an optimistic and hopeful one of humanity, that we share more with one another than divides us, and that there are ways of reorganizing society radically, and that our categories and our lexicon has to alter significantly, because left and right are starting to become redundant when there are so many similarities between the left and right, when both appear to be driving towards centralist authoritarian models where you are surveilled and censored at will, where free conversation is closed down on the basis that there is some other authority that knows better than you what you mean when you're speaking, and that they have the right to shut you down. Press that red button and join us over on Local so you can ask questions to Tucker. I'm assuming that your question's for Tucker, although I'll answer any question that you throw my way, let me tell you. @TheBoss says, what is your relationship with Trump like now? But before Tucker tells us what his relationship with Donald Trump is like right now, having said once, like, you know, those text messages, remember that stuff? Yeah. And then publicly saying that Donald Trump is significant. Plus, we've got to talk about RFK. Plus, we've got to talk about censorship. Plus, we've got to talk about the military-industrial complex. Plus, we've got to talk about the Hunter Biden laptop. And plus, we've got to talk about Big Pharma. And in order to do that, we have to have free speech. That's why you've got to click on the link in the description. Join us over on Rumble right now. And if you're with us on Rumble, bye-bye YouTube. We love you, you 6.4 million Awakening Wonders. If you're watching us